Hello, welcome to Europe Now on France 24. This programme coming to you from Germany and later on Austria too. Both countries holding national elections just a matter of weeks apart. Polls where the far right are dominating the headlines. Well, we will be taking you to Austria a bit later on. Right now, let's focus on Germany. It is a founder member of the EU and of the Eurozone. And with a population of almost 83 million people, it is the biggest member state. Well, German voters have just returned Angela Merkel as Chancellor for a fourth consecutive time. They've also put the far right into parliament for the first time since the 1940s, the AfD becoming the third biggest political force here in Germany. Well, let's kick things off with a roundup of the big takeaways from election night.
Expressing their shock and anger at an historic moment for German politics, these Berliners mounted an impromptu protest on election night. As it emerged, the Alternative for Deutschland party had won its first seats in parliament, the first for a far-right party since the 1940s.
I'm protesting against a repeat of history here in Germany.
It's a mystery why we have to face that kind of hatred, but that's just the way it is and we have to live with it.
There were historic results too for the two biggest parties, but not the kind of history that they'd have liked. Angela Merkel's CDU-CSU union came out on top with a double-digit lead. That meant her becoming Chancellor for a fourth time. But this was the union's lowest vote share since World War II. The Social Democrats of Martin Schulz also notched up a historically low score, swiftly vowing to enter the opposition and not a coalition government. Instead, it's the Liberals and the Greens that Angela Merkel is looking to, but their clashing manifestos promise a far from easy ride.
We've brought you now far from the bustle of the capital to the beautiful historic Black Forest town of Freiburg, and we're here to meet one of the local MEPs, Andreas Schwab. Very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Catherine.
Now, you're from the Chancellor's own party, the CDU. To what do you attribute her success?
Most people believe that she is continuing that stability for Germany that most people in Germany think is a great thing for us, not only in economic terms, but also in social terms.
Now, we know that Angela Merkel is particularly popular with younger voters, especially the 18 to 21-year-old age range. Why do you think that is?
She has created a certain, let's say, positive feeling, because with a lot of topics that she has taken over from the Green Party, from other parties, she has become more attractive for young voters than any other politician, and that's in a certain way also one of her key successes.
Well, handily enough, you've brought us here to the university in Freiburg, where you yourself studied, is that right?
It's true.
And I think it would be a good idea to go and speak to some young voters, some students. Let's go and find out what they think.
Great idea. So, hello, good morning, how are you?
I'm great, you?
So, now the election is finished.
Well, I think Merkel has the most experience from all politicians, well, in Germany and probably also in Europe. So if there's someone who can solve these problems, this will be Merkel.
But we have to say now, the refugee crisis at the beginning was not always seen as a positive move.
Yeah, I was really surprised with that, because I was critical at first, but then it played out that she had a plan and she moved on, and now it's working.
What's next?
I lived a year in Romania, and I can't understand why there are a lot of programs between the Western European countries and not with the Eastern.
I mean, that's a very good point, because Jean-Claude Juncker, the President of the European Commission, wants to hold the next big summit where we decide about the time after Brexit in Romania. There will be also the Romanian presidency, and so maybe there is also a window of opportunity for Eastern countries to use that as a tool. But it's true, education is not a European issue, it's a national competency. And for these points, we should move Europe in a little bit in areas where we don't have responsibilities yet, and that's one part where Macron wants to go forward. And therefore, that's an interesting point. Vielen Dank, bis zum nächsten Mal. Schönen Tag.
Danke. Tschüss.
Now, Now, we know that one of the big themes, not just of the campaign, but a big political theme here in Germany for the last couple of years has been migration. Where do you see migration policy heading over the next 4 years in Germany, considering everything the country's gone through?
The AfD vote, in a certain way, can be explained with the fact that there is a group of Germans that are at unease with all these migrants in Germany. Although you don't see them anymore in the streets or whatever, they found a good organizational tool to manage the refugee crisis in Germany. So I think we are over the real crisis, and we have now to make sure that those people that are here can be brought backwards in their country if war is over or if a solution is found, or that they can be integrated into German society.
Well, indeed, refugees returning to their home countries could well be very far down the line. There might well be a great number of refugees who do end up staying in Germany. Integration is a big challenge, isn't it?
We have to avoid that they are too strongly clustered, but that they are as broadly as distributed all over the country, which is not easy to be organized. But we need that to happen so that they can learn the German language quickly, that they can really understand how life in Germany is happening. But I think we have also a good example from the 90s, where we had also to integrate 600,000 Serbs and Croats from the former country of Yugoslavia. And we managed quite well to bring them back after the period of the crisis. And those who stayed, they found a good job here.
Well, that theme of migration has been absolutely central to one of the newer political forces in the German election that you yourself mentioned, AfD. That's the Alternative für Deutschland party. They were born just a couple of years ago as an anti-Euro party. Then they switched their message much more heavily onto migration. That message changing once again a little bit more in recent months. Our reporter Luke Brown has been to find out a bit more about the AfD.
Small towns like Waldheim here in Saxony, a fertile ground for the AfD, the Alternative for Deutschland. The party scored 25% here in the state, more than twice the national average. Local candidate Heiko Hessenkemper has a simple message: our Germany comes first.
I can only spend €1 once, so I either give it to social welfare and refugees, and the majority of them will never enter the labor market, but they'll profit from our social system indefinitely. Or I can spend the same money on kindergartens and schools.
Here, that Germany First slogan is striking a chord. Last year, the German state spent over €9 billion dealing with the influx of migrants. Over 200 of those beneficiaries are lodged in this centre near Leipzig. Each adult receives €320 a month. Nadi Huller Faisi is Afghan. He and his family arrived in 2015. But despite Germany's official welcome, he knows many locals resent his presence.
I don't feel great here in Saxony. Perhaps there are some Nazis who don't want foreigners to live here. But we have no other choice but to live here.
People like Nadi Huller and his family are not the only targets of the AfD. It started out an anti-European party just 4 years ago. For its MEP Beatrix von Storch, proposing an alternative to mainstream policies is a vote winner.
Migration and Islam is one, European Union and the Euro is another one. We're founded on the grounds of the Euro, and now we're focusing, of course, on migration and Islam, because this is what the people's interest is.
The AfD's rise does not come without resistance. Gisela's grandparents were imprisoned by the Nazi regime. Now she's worried that the far right is returning to the national parliament, the Bundestag.
We already had the Nazis take us over once. They're coming back now. That's why I have to resist. They think they are an alternative, but in reality, they're not proposing any alternative.
The AfD's popularity also springs from frustration about inequality in Germany. Unemployment in the east is 8.5%, a third higher than the national average. Voters here feel betrayed by the mainstream parties, with Angela Merkel the main target. The party's success has polarized Germany. Here in Jena, anti-fascist demonstrators have come to disrupt an AfD rally. The two sides are separated by the police. Several hundred AfD supporters defy that protest. Their own anger is directed at Germany's ruling class.
I'm strongly against Angela Merkel. Throughout the 3 mandates, she has messed up Germany. Angela Merkel still says like this, we don't need to tighten our borders. And I'm not okay with that at all.
That rage has propelled the AfD into the national parliament for the first time. Its co-leader, Alice Weidel, will take their message to the Bundestag to address Angela Merkel.
The people realise the massive mistakes that this current government has made. My message for Angela Merkel is, I cannot accept what our country has been reduced to.
Angry nationalism and political populism in Germany raise uncomfortable memories for many. The challenge for the mainstream parties will be confronting the reasons for the voters' disenchantment as the far right seeks to increase its share of the vote.
Well, you've brought us now to the rather beautiful, picturesque and, of course, historic old town of Freiburg. Another issue that many people, particularly outside of Germany, often see as paradoxal is the fact that it is a country with this strong economy, unemployment is very low here. However, at the same time, there are millions of Germans who are in employment and yet struggling to make ends meet. Is that something that you see as likely to change over the next 4 years?
The key question is how can we organize in a society of the 21st century participation for everyone? And I think in that respect, Germany is a very, very advanced country because we have been able to manage lots of people to be part of the system of work, of employment, being part of the society.
Well, Andreas Schwab, thank you so much for being our guest.
Pleasure.
And for being our guide around this beautiful city of Freiburg. We'll just move on with a report from our correspondent in Berlin, Anne Maillet. She's picked up on that very topic we were just talking about, that paradox of people who are in work but struggling to make ends meet.
Booming growth, a historically low unemployment rate. On paper, Germany is doing very well. But behind the great economic success, there is also a different reality, that of Thomas. For more than 10 years, he has moved between different jobs with no security. He started a mini-job a few months ago, a contract of €450 for 40 hours a month delivering pizzas. It means he is no longer considered unemployed, but it is not enough to live without aid from the state.
There are more than 10 million people like me living in difficult situations. Out of 80 million citizens, 10 million poor is a lot. So I don't really believe in the miracle of German employment. I just see that the situation has deteriorated for many people since the reforms of the 2010 agenda and Hartz IV.
Labour market reforms in the early 2000s led to an explosion of insecure and part-time jobs. The number of working poor has doubled since then, and their situation is often very changeable. We meet Richard in this food aid centre. He is an educator. He comes here between 2 jobs.
Sausages, meat and cheese.
Thanks to food aid, Richard saves around €40 per week. As he doesn't have any savings, it's a big help. 1 in 10 workers in Germany is considered poor. The Hans Böckler Foundation, which has close links to trade unions, believes that this unprecedented rise in poverty in Europe is due to pressure on the unemployed to accept every job they are offered. But in such a strong economy, these sorts of jobs should be less common.
It is possible to make many of these insecure jobs more secure, and this must now be a priority. We found that with the introduction of a minimum wage in particular, some mini-jobs became less attractive to employers and have therefore been replaced by full-time jobs.
And yet, the working poor was only a marginal issue in the election campaign. So Thomas has decided to tackle his job insecurity on his own. At the age of 42, he has now gone back to school to train to become a welder.
Germany is a country that is very much at the heart of Europe, not just geographically, but also politically. And that means whoever is in charge of this country, their relations with their European neighbours and the wider world are very closely scrutinised. Well, that's why we've brought you to this symbolic location of a footbridge between Germany and France, crossing the Rhine. To talk about Germany's international and particularly European relations with MEP Jakob von Weizsäcker. Thank you very much for being with us.
Pleasure to be here.
From the Social Democratic Party in Germany. Now, in terms of Germany's relations with the wider world, in this post-Brexit era, Europe is changing, it's going to change. Many commentators are saying that France and Germany are going to come closer together and forge a new Europe in their vision, the vision of these two founding member states. Is that what you see happening?
Together, hopefully, they will relaunch this Franco-German partnership to move Europe forward and to solve its problems. And the key problems that right now need solving are in the economic area, with the single currency that needs a better architecture, it needs to be run in a better way, and of course, the Schengen area. That's the Europe without borders that makes this bridge possible. But of course, that poses some challenges these days.
Well, two people who used their Schengen free movement rights to meet on this bridge just a couple of years ago was Angela Merkel and the former French President Nicolas Sarkozy in a very symbolic meeting. What do you think the Merkel-Macron couple might be like?
I think Macron has had a good start when it comes to foreign policy. Of course, he has a difficult agenda domestically. Merkel will also need to balance the domestic agenda, the European agenda and the global agenda. But I very much hope that there won't be complacency or distraction.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all of your thoughts with us. German MEP Jakob von Weizsäcker, thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.
And while we're talking all things international, it's a good moment for us to pack our bags, head east and take you off to Austria for part 2 of today's programme. Do stay with us here on France 24.
What do you want from your news website? France24.com, giving you easier access to information and faster for a unique experience. France24.com, the international news website.